because there are so many ways that we identify ourselves and that others identify us, that essentially, if you identified yourself, there is something that's going to be different than the person who may be with you. So diversity in its base form just means that there's difference in the room. There's difference here. So this is just a picture of some of the types of ways that we are different. And and so if you pick out what fits you, and I pick out what fits me, it's going to be different, And so, simply, diversity means the difference that occurs when you have more than one person together based on their identities. Equity is a little bit more complex, And so, if you look at this picture, what you see is that you see, on one hand, you see a group of people on the left that that are actually practicing equality, which means that what they have is the same thing. Everybody gets the same thing in equality. But as you see, equality is not getting necessarily the two smaller people what they need, right? So equity is not the same as equality. Equity means that people are getting what they need. And a good example that I like to give is that if I gave you all size 12 shoes, you might or might not be able to use them. That would depend on what size shoe you wore. Equity would mean that if you need shoes, you get the shoes that fit you. You get the size of shoe that fits you. So equity is important because it also means that there isn't a level playing field. And we have to acknowledge that there isn't a level playing field before we begin the conversation, because if we don't, then we are not likely to be able to meet the needs of the people who have come into the room. And this is inclusion. So just to get to inclusion, we're going to go through the ways that people gather. One is exclusion. And as you see, and that means that there's a group of people inside and there's a group of people outside, and never the twain shall meet. So this is, we are excluding you. We have criteria that we're using to do that. And segregation, on the other hand, means that you're separate, but you belong to the groups that you happen to. So for instance, if you use racial segregation, then you say the blues are the blacks and the reds are the whites, and so they do not mix necessarily. They live in different places. They probably go to school in different places, and that's how segregation begins. So it may be that they do that by choice, but typically it's more exclusion than not. Integration, on the other hand, means that in the larger scheme of things, you might be together, but you're not totally inclusive. And that is, you may have smaller groups that have different privileges than other groups. So, and inclusion, if you look at the last one, means that everybody's there, everybody is getting what they need, and they can interact, and they're also different, And so, when we look at inclusion, that's after equity, you have to have all three of them. So first, you do have to have people who are different if you want good outcomes. But with regard to equity, they need to be getting what they need in order to do that. And to do that, we need to make sure that they are included fully in the life of the organization or the life of the neighborhood or whatever group you may be talking about. And so in a minute, we're going to start. So in a minute, we're going to talk about how you might apply those particular practices those particular principles to instructional design. But as we engage in conversation, what we like to do is to have some ground rules that we use to operate when we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, or whenever we're having a difficult and yet courageous conversation. And the first is to stay engaged. And that means we know you're busy, but if you really want to do it, then what you really need to do is put everything else aside and pay attention, right? And stay engaged in the conversation. The second is to speak your truth. Now, everybody has a different truth. And probably the truth lies somewhere between your truth and my truth as we have a conversation. So using I as a pronoun when you make statements is a good idea, because you want to speak from what you're feeling, what you're experiencing, and not necessarily categorizing what other people are experiencing, because that's their truth and they need to be the ones that express that. The third is to experience discomfort. When you talk about things like racial equity, it's difficult conversations. So you have to allow yourself to feel a certain amount of discomfort, or else you're probably not learning a lot. You know, um, uh, so make yourself open and vulnerable as you can, and at the same time, make sure that you understand that everybody's feeling the discomfort for different reasons, perhaps, but allow yourself to experience that discomfort. The next is to grant amnesty and honor confidentiality. You know what? We're all doing the best we can. So these kind of conversations are difficult. So if you're courageous enough to start it, understand that somebody else may say something that might not feel right to you, but don't make assumptions. Ask them what they mean, or gently say, "Well, I didn't feel good about that particular statement. I don't understand what you meant." So grant amnesty to people, because, as I said, if you show up, it means you're interested, and we're all doing the best that we can. And we can also do that by honoring confidentiality. So how they say what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas? Well, what happens in these conversations should stay in these conversations. So I wouldn't take it out and say, well, Jennifer said this and Linda said that. Honor the confidentiality that occurs when you enter a group and have these conversations. The fifth is expect and accept non-closure. These issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion didn't occur overnight. They've occurred over the course of the country's beginnings till now. And so you can't expect them to be resolved tomorrow. It is going to take time. And the same is true of a conversation. When we have a conversation, we're not going to solve all the problems of the world in that one conversation. We may take a step, we may not, but you have to understand that it's not going to necessarily be resolved at the end of any particular conversation that you have. And last but not least, even though these are difficult conversations, I like to say, have fun doing serious things. We added that because if you can't laugh at yourself, then it's really hard to do this stuff. Right now, particularly with all the things going on, life is hard. So I find every reason I can to laugh whenever I can. And so please feel free. If I flub up or I say something funny, please feel free to laugh, and please feel free to smile. Because it just changes the way we feel when we do that. Can I go back to you, Jennifer?
Definitely. So, thank you, Eileen. I think that gives us a really good overview of what diversity, equity, and inclusion is. And I do want to make sure that we have plenty of time to ask questions. Some people may be online, and this may be a topic that they want to ask a question. Please feel free at any time. We can stop the presentation and answer your questions. So just based on the definitions of diversity, equity, inclusion, and also how to engage in having these real courageous conversations. Some of the projects that we've done here at Bunifu, we've had to, especially when COVID hit, and many of the racial things that came up in society, many clients came to us to help support them in how to address those. And so one of the clients that came to us was actually a high school foundation that services about 100,000 students across the country. And we had to turn about 60 45-minute self-paced courses for students 9th through 12th grade. But within those courses, they didn't just want to hit about, okay, they wanted to talk initially about college, but they then wanted to hit on some really critical issues because that was what students were asking. What's happening with, police brutality? What's happening with various and different communities? And why are these injustices happening? And so they wanted to create a online curriculum to do that. And I'll tell you one thing, when you talk about courageous conversations and staying engaged, first of all, I think it's about self-reflection. And even through projects as an instructional designer, I don't have all the answers, but I need to also always reflect and also try to listen to my client and also try to listen to what are the needs. And then also debunk some of the myths that I have. And I'll tell you, this project really debunked some of the challenges or myths that I had in coming in. But anyway, so going in, we created some self-paced courses. So many of the topics were around issues in which, such as issues that disadvantage or traditionally disadvantaged groups, such as African Americans, Latinos, women, the LGBTQ community, also just, diverse issues where there were things that students needed to talk about. We talked about microaggressions and how to support and empower students, and we use that through videos. And these are just some images. We felt like images for young people were something that was very important to highlight and put in, that about unity and community and showing that diversity, where Aline talked about that is like your first realm of identifying, okay, what is diversity? And then we also looked at case studies. We took case studies of students that had challenges dealing with certain inequities or injustices, but also success stories. And we had students discuss that, but these were self-paced courses where we had video of different case studies and documentaries of different case studies to have students actually respond to them. And then we had like a matrix protocol in which they had to identify, okay, what is going on as far as the system here? How is the system? How are the injustices occurring? What can I do? Maybe internally, because there might be some internal things that I have to deal with, and how do I empower myself to do so? And then can I come outside of myself and create justice or become an advocate for justice? And so we help students to basically process these different things that were going on through self-paced courses. And as you can see, some of the imagery that we used. Equity is something that Eileen talked about. One of the things is that when COVID hit for many schools across the world, some folks didn't have access to technology, where we're here and we are online, whether it's on our phone or whether it's on an iPad or what have you. So we had to make sure that all of our e-learning was accessible through all types of mobile devices. We also created what is called a digital journal, because students that did not have printers at home, so we couldn't expect them to print and reply. We actually had to create digital formats in which they could respond digitally and upload information or send information to whoever the instructor was. So another demonstration, Kat talked a little bit about some work that she did with us around some facilitator guides, and how she created, just from some simple PowerPoints, a train the trainer product to support training around diversity and inclusion issues, and how she translated that through graphic design. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that over to you, Kat.
Great, thank you. Can everybody hear me all right?
Yes.
Yeah, just thumbs up. Okay, the first thing that I appreciated working with our client, Karen, is that she already had a pretty good idea about what kind of her color schemes were going to be. And so we just kind of firmed up that a little bit by adding the hex codes to it. And I just want to ask the audience, and maybe just write this in the chat, when you see these colors, what are some adjectives that you think of when you think about color psychology? Color psychology is how, when we look at a color, how it makes us feel. So I'm going to give you a minute there to just write in some different adjectives that come to your mind when you see these colors. Good, good. Okay, I see some comments coming in. Jennifer said soft. Linda was saying a meld of tones. So tones are, boy, let's see if I can recall this. The definition of tones is where you take a base color and add any other colors from the color wheel to alter it or change it slightly. So let me just, I want to tell you a few things that in the past that I've noticed about some of these colors. First of all, these are all warm colors, which means they're on that red side of the color wheel. Cool colors are like ocean, grass, anything that you think of cool, like the blues and greens. So this is definitely on the warm spectrum. And I'm going to just list off a few things. Warm colors would signify optimism. It's also stable. So when I ask you let me just give you an example. UPS uses that kind of brown color for their logo, and that's very intentional. Brown is an earthy tone, and it's very stable. So when we when we want to use, if we want UPS brand to be stable, they're going to use that color. It's warm, it's inviting, and it's also energetic. So we've got a lot of those things going on already: optimism, stable, warm, inviting, energetic. So really great colors. It also, the obvious one is it is representing all the diversity in this project that we're working on. So do you want to go to the next slide? So the next part of the brand that we're building for this project was the images, and the colors were going to highlight the images, but the images and what was happening in the images was really important because they became the central focal point of everything that we were building. I really wanted to take what Karen was doing and highlight those, or visualize those concepts that she was talking about. So we have, in the first image, we have, of course, some like unity, and then like around a circle, which is always a universal theme of unity, as a circle. And then the second image was these hopeful young people looking towards the future, of course. Eye direction is really important when you are choosing photographs. Where the eyes are looking is super important. So those folks in that second image are looking towards the future, which is really optimistic and hopeful, which again is reflected in that color scheme that we had. And then the second one is, we really wanted to make sure that we had that educational component. So we have a group of people working together, collaborating, learning, and then same with the last image. If you look at their eyes, they're all focused sort of like on a project. They're working on a project together. I see some curiosity with the one woman in the middle, and with the guy on the right, I see some some good humor, which we talked about earlier. It's important to have fun when we're doing hard things. Those were overall the brand was like these black and white photos with that strong color scheme coming in. So do you want to go to the next slide? Oh, we also developed a variety of icons. Icons are nice because they are a universal language. So instead of saying, I have an idea, we have a light bulb. So a light bulb this is a moment, a pro tip, a moment for learning. So like the light bulb went off. I like to use icons a lot because one, we process them a lot faster. And two, like I said, it breaks down all language barriers. If you think about McDonald's, if you're by like the fry bin where they're frying French fries, they don't have like a lot of words. They just have like the icon of the person like, oh, don't get near this, it's really hot, you might get burned. And that goes back to, we process that in our frontal lobe a lot faster than if we had to read the instructions like, don't, touch the hot oil or something. We can actually respond a lot faster. So it's safer, and it's a universal language. Like anyone can read that image, which I love that about icons. Okay, next slide, please. Thanks. So workshop one, I just did some screenshots of we did a presentation. We did both standard screen and a wide screen because again, we want to take into account different technical, wherever they are on the technical spectrum. Like I have an old projector from 1982 or, some fancy new widescreen. So these, again, also another way that I kept them really accessible for everyone is that I created them in PowerPoint, which is even the facilitator guide, because it's accessible to everyone. Most people have access to PowerPoint, and it was really important for both Jennifer and I to make sure that the clients could edit their own documents. I don't like to create a product that's kind of like exclusive and like no one else can like, change it, or they would have to like pay someone to change it. We wanted to make sure that it was accessible. And we did the logo for her. We made it into a vector graphic, which means that it won't get fuzzy over time. And you can also make it as big or as small as you want, and it won't ever lose resolution. So we have the slide overall, the brand for the slide, the 4 workshops. What was on the left, we have this sort of technology education solution, as Jennifer talked about earlier, as we went into online education during the pandemic. And then we had this brick and mortar on the right of these folks talking to each other face to face in person. So we wanted to capture both those elements of the educational process, and then again, that strong image in the middle. And then you'll see throughout all of it, the color scheme coming through with that circle. All right, you want to go to the next slide? Same thing here. You can see the repeating images in the background, but we've changed both the color and the central image. And so we have the presentation and the facilitator's guide there. And then the next slide, please. And then you can see that theme carrying through. And here's that third image that I showed earlier, same presentation and the workbook. And then the next slide in the workshop 4, you can see that color carrying through there again. And then the next slide. And so there they all kind of are, all the slides face, on one page, so that you can kind of see the brand really coming together. And the good thing about a foundational brand is that you can continue to expand on it. If you have a really strong brand of black and white photos with color, then you can start to develop from there. And a font. We did the font and we did the icons, and all of that was part of the brand, so that it would have a professional look and feel for her. All right, and then the next slide. Okay, so these are some of the secondary slide, like the building cross-cultural capability, that is a transition slide. So you're transitioning from sections. And then also the agenda one, the agendas were the same all throughout the 4 workshops. The circle one with the earth, I thought that was really fantastic. Again, a circle is a very powerful image. There's so many times we see it, and it just is like unity, and it's just always familiar for us, and it makes us also feel stable and safe. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the Maya Angelou quote, because I want to talk to you about portraits. And I spent some time looking for this portrait. First of all, we had some challenges because we were trying to work around copyright issues. Fortunately, we found this wonderful photo after looking for a while. I think it's from the LA Times. I want to talk to you about portraits. When you see her face, what are the way the portrait is arranged? What are some adjectives that you think about that portrait? If you could just write those in the chat. Just some things that makes you think of when you see that portrait. Yep, reflection, exactly. This portrait, she is very much in, I mean, it's so complex, right? How can a face capture so many emotions and feelings? And it has to do with the way the portrait is taken. She is very reflective. She may be a bit troubled. She's definitely thinking. And remember that I told you when you're looking off the camera, it's very different than when you're looking straight at the camera. When you're looking straight at the camera, it can be confrontational and sometimes aggressive. But if you turn a little bit, it evokes that sort of looking to the future or looking to the past, or and so I think it was expertly taken because it captures all of those emotions, and it's not confrontational. It's very inviting, and also the way the light falls on her face is really amazing too, because it's capturing all those features. And then her face is sort of emerging. It's emerging out of the darkness, right? And so like there's a point around her head where I can't see her hair anymore. And so I just think that that's like psychologically really engaging because it just begs you to look at it more and try to figure it out more. So I love anything that's like that. Let's see, do we have another slide? I think that's all I have. Yep.
Thank you, Kat. It was a exciting project to work on with Karen, who really is the mastermind, who's the client around those materials. And we were able to listen and gain her knowledge on how she wanted, her training to be delivered and how it would be displayed. So, I always think the client is also a good person to think about how think about how you're developing a lot of the materials. So we're just lastly, I want to get into the groups, and we have about 15 minutes left. And this is a good opportunity. We're probably not going to do many groups because it's such a small. So I think it'd be great just to have a really lively discussion with all of us about how we would create and brainstorm around developing training and development and instructional design around diversity, equity, and inclusion. This last project I'm really excited about. It's a current project that my team is doing, and we have several people. We actually have 6 people working on this particular project, and it's a pre-K through first grade curriculum. So think of 3-year-olds to 5-year-olds that are engaging in this type of learning. And the goal of the curriculum was essentially to take an existing program that had been in existence for over 30 plus years, where they were doing exceptionally great work with students at schools who were underrepresented student groups, who were low income students, and supporting them and helping their literacy and growing and increasing their literacy by margins, by, just by being there on a one-on-one tutoring session. But unfortunately, when COVID hit, this program had to stop because things became virtual. So they saw the need to basically take their curriculum that was doing great work and delivering it in a online type of space. So we wanted to make sure that the tools were accessible, that also there were tutors that might have been from 60 to 90 years old. So we wanted to make sure that it was accessible, because we had volunteer tutors who may not have been so great at technology. So we wanted to make sure that we created a way for them to be able to tutor and engage in students from a virtual place. So we came up with a theme where we wanted to empower young children around through superheroes. And so we wanted to make sure that it was reflective of diversity. So that whole diversity piece. And we wanted students to feel like they were included just by the visuals. And so we made it a superhero theme. The wonderful thing is that they had an idea already where they had a scientific way in which to deliver literacy to students, which we just took, and we took their scientific way and learned from them on how we could create ways in which students could work through different sensories, but do it online. So we had to create some gamification, which we used Articulate Storyline to do some matching activities, some drag and drop activities, and things like that for the students. And we also made lots and lots of mini videos. So there are about 36 videos that we created, about 1 minute to 3 minutes long, around the sounds. But we made sure that the videos were reflective of the student groups that they would be tutoring and supporting. So I was going to show the video, but we don't have time for that. So let me go to the next. Whoops, I went too far. There we go. So I am going to, we're going to have a discussion. We don't have a lot of people to basically put you in groups. I was hoping that we would. So we're going to throw out some things that are just some hot topics today, and what is going on in the news, what are some trends, what are some things that are happening as far as diversity, equity, and inclusion. So, we're going to ask you to develop some training and design some training. And I want you to think about two of the questions at the bottom. But first, we're going to choose one of the topics: Black Lives Matter, gender inequality, LGBTQ community, access to technology, or vaccination, when we talk about COVID, disparity. And then two questions we want to ask in our groups is, what type of tone or language and images would you use as you design one of these type of case studies or topics to relay your information or to give content in a diverse and inclusive and equitable way? And then how would you apply diversity, equity, and inclusion as you develop your training? So I'm actually, going to open up. We're going to let's choose one of the topics. And if you all could unmute yourselves and put in the chat, we'll do a vote here. Which topic would you like to discuss? Go ahead and put it in the chat. What's your burning topic that you feel that these are things that are happening and that you would like to be able to create some instructional design around? Not all at once. Go ahead and throw your ideas into the chat. Give me something. What? Black Lives Matter, gender inequality. What would you want to talk about? Access to technology. Okay, we have 2 Black Lives Matter. All right. So access to technology. Now, don't get a tie here. Okay, and we did. Eileen, I think you're muted. What did you say?
Okay, I was going to introduce another one altogether. How about vaccination disparity? How about vaccination disparity?
Vaccination. Oh, yeah, that's one of them. Yes.
I
Oh,
know.
you want to add that one on there?
Yeah, I didn't want to break the tie. Oh,
So let's do come. I'm gonna say, Linda, help me out. Give me another one that you would do
well,
secondary.
Jackie did both of them. Jacqueline did both of them.
Oh, did she? Okay,
Yeah,
so
she did Black Lives Matter.
Yeah,
So
you
either
can-
one I get, either one of those is fine. So
okay,
let's,
the-
Jackie, I'm okay doing any of them. I just wanted to put something in there.
okay.
thanks, Jackie. All right, so let's start with Black Lives Matter. That's what I have at the top there. So based on, and this is everybody, presenters, people that are on in general, what type of tone and language and images would you use as you design this type of training?
On training about Black Lives Matter?
Yes, about Black Lives Matter.
Well, one of the things that I am so hesitant about is choosing the wrong image to offend someone. You know,
Mhm.
one of the things that I've become cognizant probably in the last 2 years is how many white images are available. And so I've really been trying to include Black images, Asian, Hispanic, in whatever I'm creating, to show that diversity. But I'm always hesitant, or I'm always scared to offend. And I think that's my biggest problem.
Yeah. That goes with I understand what you're saying, because that kind of goes with the guideline that we have in terms of granting amnesty, so probably I would do images that reflect still a diverse group of people. And yet the logo of Black Lives Matter is pretty clear. That's Black Lives Matter, usually with a black shirt and white lettering, right?
Yeah.
And so I might have all different kinds of people wearing that shirt, so that what it says is that everybody can think that Black Lives Matter. You don't have to be Black to do that, and so that's one way I would do it. I might do it.
Also, Jackie, when I was doing some of the images for some of the projects that I talked about earlier, I needed amnesty because I needed granted some grace, because I was choosing images, but sometimes they would show power within the images, like a power of somebody taller or somebody lower. And it was totally not on my radar at all. And the client was like, do you see that this is up and this is down? And I was like, oh, just, but, I quickly learned from, other people about how things, and I had to be open to saying, okay, I don't know this. And so I then changed it, because it was actually a power thing within the images that I was showing.
A power dynamic for sure.
Yeah.
And see, I've kind of started realizing those things too. And for me, I think just being cognizant of those kind of things has helped me a lot too, because I'll pick an image and then I go, oh, I didn't realize that was in there. And then I'll pick something else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I
Now,
had a similar thing, Jackie. Oh, sorry, Jennifer.
Go ahead.
Oh, well, I work at a hospital, and it is very difficult, as you know, Jennifer, when we were working on that project, to find, you should have seen the search criteria. We were like, we had to put in all kinds of things to find images, and we couldn't find any. It was crazy. And I think I texted her at one time and I was like, I can't believe this is 2021 and we can't find pictures. For example, if you type in manager in our software, it brings up a man with a tie. I'm like, what is going on?
Yeah.
But I did just want to say one part where I was super uncomfortable because I didn't know. I work at a hospital, there's 17,000 employees, and we had to actually I was doing a training on code pink. And if y'all know what that is, that's when a baby is stolen from the hospital. So it's already very sad. And, you know, what's your response? So again, couldn't find photos. And so what I've been doing is I'm an illustrator. So I illustrated a picture of a baby, and then I had to think about skin color and how that would be perceived by everyone. And I really had to reflect on it for several days and ask people, I'm like, what should I do? Like, how would this come across? And so, but I will tell you that when I also had to do a code amber, which is a child that's abducted from the hospital under the age of 18. But I had an opportunity with the child to, we're in Portland, Oregon. So I don't know if you know anything about Portland, Oregon, but I was able to change the illustration to make the girl appear like she's LGBTQ. In Portland, we have a lot of kids, and I don't know about where y'all live, but we have a lot of kids with, pink hair or purple hair. And I just wanted to really show the diversity of that little girl, because I thought that was really important. So it was a struggle, though.
So how, and I think we kind of talked about this already, how would you apply diversity, equity, and inclusion as you're developing this training? I just want to answer one thing, is that even though we're developing the training, someone may be engaging in the training. And so I think the courageous conversation, sometimes we're on the back end and we may be developing. That's usually what I'm doing. I'm developing, but I'm not necessarily always delivering what I'm developing all the time. And so it's important to also, Eileen talked about that diversity or courageous conversations. Like, even before we get into these topics, it creates angst for everybody. You get hot around the face and like, what are we doing? What are we talking? But I think it's important to commit. I think, commit to the engagement, but also have grace, because if we don't have the conversation, we can't move any further. If we don't learn about each other and open up, we can't move any further.
Yes. And so one of the things is to decide what your purpose is. What's the purpose of your training? And the purpose will help you, I think, to determine what the tone should be, what images you should use, and because if you're trying to persuade someone, you might do something. If you're really trying to make them not do it, then you might use different colors. If you want to be inviting, you use other colors, right, Kate? So to decide what the purpose of your training is, very as specifically as you can probably help you to make some decisions about how what kind of images you use, for instance, or what tone or language that you use.
So we're actually,
I agree.
We're almost actually at the end of the hour, and I wanted to open up to some questions if there's any questions. We do have some good people who have some expertise in the area, if anybody has any questions.
So I guess my biggest question then is don't be scared to just try. And then do you bounce those ideas off of people?
Absolutely.
And see the reaction you get back, or?
I think so. I think what you do, as Jennifer said, is you basically, particularly if you have a client, then you certainly run it by them, but you also might have someone in your circle that fits, that fits the bill. And so I would just ask them, what do you think about this? And how do you like it? So that you can get
Yeah.
the kind of response that you want, in addition to perhaps your client's response.
Okay, thank you.
This kind of sounds crazy, but I am crazy. My kids growing up loved to be called monkeys, because we went to the zoo, they play, the monkeys jumped around, they pretended to be the monkeys and whatever. And when I suggested that as one of the things to be included in the curriculum, there was kind of gasp. And, I'm like, you don't like monkeys? It's like, not that we don't like monkeys, but we've been called it so much in such negative ways that
Yeah.
Who wants to have it in a curriculum, And it was, it so broke my heart, because it's like, who would ever use a monkey like that? It's like, and who would ever diminish any kind of part of creation? You know what I mean? So it's been, an eye opener to how much I don't know. So.
And I think all of us don't. We're always learning. We're always learning, and I think it's a lifelong process, especially around these issues. We've been dealing with these issues, and challenges for a very long time, and I think, I know for me, it's been doing a lot of, self-reflection, but also reading about different groups that I may not know about, or what are the challenges, because there's our stigmas around, things like we have in DC. I'm not a native of DC. I live in DC, but there's wards in DC, and meaning that we're divided in different wards. And because of where you live geographically could be a negative connotation on how that, but if I don't know what my geography is or what the people have been, I will miss it. So, it's, it was about me learning and understanding, because it was something when I got here that I overlooked, because it wasn't that I was trying to be malicious and I was trying to do anything. It was more about, I didn't have an understanding, and I needed to have an understanding, and I needed to be aware. So I am actually going to close up the webinar today. We do have some resources. The PowerPoint presentation deck will be sent out. We put a couple of resources in here for folks to be able to access and utilize as well. And again, please reach out to me or any of the experts that are here online to, have a further discussion about this topic. I think, we just can't have an hour discussion and that's it. I think it's, it has to be continual. But I really appreciate everybody coming on. I want to also thank my panelists for prepping for this and getting everything together and being able to present this. We will send out the recording to everybody, so other folks will have access to this presentation as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.